Welcome.
I don't know.
I'm trying to start it.
Okay, wait. Let me refresh my zone. I got a Capri Sun here, and I'm gonna use that to just calm myself down a little bit.
Welcome to Direct-to-Video.
What was that noise?
I dropped something.
Oh, okay. Do you want to?
Welcome to Direct-to-Video VHS. Look.
VHS?
Look, nobody said it was the best produced podcast online.
The produced podcast is such a strong term
That
for
hurts
what we do here.
and is
but-
accurate.
I'm sorry. That was a little rude.
Yeah, as the one who releases all of them, that's kind of rude, man.
This is a podcast where we pair movies like fine wine.
Oh, yeah. We get some of that sweet, salty beverage today.
Calamari, I would say, is the flavor of this one.
Except that, actually, I don't think we see any sea creatures in this movie, which is wild if you stop to think about it for a second.
Well, we see those, like, weird, like, lobster-like lobster things, right? Like, we get that whole thing where she, like...
It's like a giant prawn.
But exactly, it looks like a massive shrimp or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, it's weird. This movie's weird.
Like the size of a dog, I mean.
Yeah. Like a small chihuahua just chilling in your bag.
Like a large chihuahua. This is a weird movie. And it reminded me of a lot of other Disney movies, because that's what happens. But part of it, and it has a lot of Jules Verne stuff, but it most reminded me of, like, Treasure Planet, which I think came out pretty much at the same time. They both had this mix of 2D and 3D animation that looked so much better than the movie was.
Yeah.
They have this design in all their stuff, and then they just slap it onto a movie that is, like, not very good and kind of problematic at times. And neither of them have any female characters. That's not fair. This one's got female characters.
This one's got, there are women in this movie.
This one has tropes
they do
of
stuff.
Female characters. This one has, like, types of female characters, but it's almost okay because it kind of just has types of male characters. Instead of giving them real characterization, it just kind of makes them fun.
I don't know, this movie really wants to be Star Wars.
You know,
but in, like, a bad way.
The other thing this movie is, and I was watching this with my girlfriend, she looked it up, this movie wants to be Firefly. This movie was actually written, partially written by...
Joss Whedon.
Joss Whedon, yes. Which means... Well, and it was all about these, like, criminals getting together on a ship and becoming buds and fighting the bad guy together, which is very much what happens in Firefly.
Well, that's also what happens in Star Wars.
It even has a young girl as the mechanic.
Yeah, oh god, that's right.
Which I assume was just something they were like, hey, we did that for that movie. Why don't we just pop it over here? Like, they liked that idea.
Apparently Joss Whedon is like, he claims that none of his idea was left in it by the time it was done, but clearly there's some influence there, right?
I mean, I think the fairest way to look at it is the characters feel kind of Joss Whedon-y. Like,
there's enough, like, banal, quippy, like, surface level interaction between this team up that feels Joss Whedon-esque.
And it is honestly, it's the one thing that I think makes the movie memorable, is having characters be able to, like, deliver these over-the-top lines, or deliver these lines in over-the-top ways that makes you think, like, hey, I like Sweets. Like, or Dr. Sweet. He's neat. He's a fun guy. But that's kind of all it has, and it just kind of has that sort of, like, Avengers quippiness without, fighting Loki.
But the thing is like, this movie doesn't... There's nothing, like... Serenity is a movie that barely works if you haven't seen the show. And I say that as somebody who has...
It's a continuation. Nobody should do what Andy did.
Yeah, that I was going to say. I say that as somebody who watched the movie and then later went and fell asleep watching, like, 8 episodes of the show.
There are only 8 episodes of the show. But...
Yeah, well, I fell asleep for most of them.
Okay.
It was a show that I just wasn't into. But, like, the movie barely stands up on its own 2 legs without that support, right? But, like, Avengers is almost nonsense. It's almost nonsense. Because so much of that movie hinges on you at least caring about one of these 6 people, right? Like, whether it's Captain America or Iron Man, or if for some reason Thor, I don't know why at that point you would, but maybe, like,
I mean,
if
yeah,
if you don't even,
or it should be noted, Loki, because the thing that a lot of people walked away from the Avengers thinking was like, man, Loki was hot.
God, people really do just love like crypto fascists.
There's 10 years of discourse about it, so
yeah, it. I guess. Oh my fucking god! I guess that's true now.
Not quite that old, but like, yeah.
Yeah. Whoa. Well, let's start at the beginning, I guess. Do you want to know how much it cost to make this movie, which came out June 15th?
Looks expensive. Was this movie? This movie seems expensive.
$120 million.
Okay, that's not nothing.
That's not nothing. That's 2001 money, right? Like, that's a lot of money. Do you want to know how much it made its opening weekend?
This movie can't have done well, right? Like, it didn't. Right? Like, I remember this movie coming out and nobody cared.
$329,000.
You know what? Good for it.
No, that's really bad, dude. That's like 3 zeros short. $329,000. That is not even a percent.
No, that is
not even a 0.5%.
Oh man, no wonder Disney wanted to scrap their 2D animation so much.
Disney got like 4 bad movies in a row. After this, we get Lilo and Stitch, which did well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before this, we had The Emperor's New Groove, which did nothing.
Even though The Emperor's New Groove is such a solid movie.
It's such a solid movie, but you need to remember what Disney was working with at the time. You had Emperor's New Groove, you had this, and then you had Lilo and Stitch, which was like the light in the darkness. And then you had Treasure Planet, Brother Bear, culminating with Home on the Range. Like, this is the beginning of the end for the 2D animation department, right?
Andy, consistently, I forget Brother Bear exists.
Home on the Range is the big one for me, because I have seen that movie and I couldn't tell you a goddamn thing about it.
I mean, I know Home on the Range exists because it's kind of insulting that it exists. Home on the Range is like, here's our last classically animated movie. And that wasn't entirely true. They had Winnie the Pooh, and then later they did
Princess and the Frog.
But
that was true for like 5 years.
A bit. It was a grip. And that was... Our last animated movie is going to be about these cows who want to kidnap a man.
It doesn't help that one of those cows is now like a noted, super huge racist piece of shit, and that's their flagship actor. It's a bad choice all around. It's rough, but like, I do think that this movie really like shows, I think, I talked about this a little bit in The Emperor's New Groove, which is that like Disney for a long time had this like magic sauce way of making movies where they were just like, well, it's gonna come together, right? To me, this movie really shows that like, even like this movie had a script, this movie had like a plan, and clearly they just didn't have the storytelling acumen to do anything with it, because this is, out of all of these movies, this movie was planned the most. Right?
And maybe it was overplanned, because the most irritating thing about this movie as I was watching it was that I could see a good movie in there somewhere. There were parts of this movie that I was like, what if this works? Like, if it wasn't so white savior-y, if it actually had more than one native character.
Yeah. 1.5. We get 1.5.
If there wasn't, for some reason, a betrayal that makes literally
no
zero sense with how the movie was set up.
This whole movie is just full of, like, there was a good idea, but all of the execution was shit, right? Every single thing past the inception of the idea is bad. Mm-hmm.
If there wasn't a mole man...
A literal mole man?
It's so weird. Like, it's like they plucked him out of the Marvel comic book, but definitely threw in a little bit of the Simpsons character.
He's literally the Underminer. He's literally the Underminer.
Oh my gosh. I hadn't even thought of that. really wanted that character back, huh?
They were really attached to that idea. This movie's got so much, but like so we start with a quote from Plato.
That quote from Plato actually really helped me understand how poorly they were executing the timeline. Because I was like, okay, Plato was like the first person to write about Atlantis, and probably it was based on an island that actually did sink off the coast of Greece, because shit like that happened.
It's believed, I think, now that there's like a specific island that, like, at some point in 373 BC, just like this massive volcano went off and just basically wiped the island off the map.
Right, and people do stuff like this where they make it like sci-fi, but and there was this idea that like a lot of knowledge and culture was lost, sort of like the burning of the Library of Alexandria.
Yeah.
And so like you can see a good core concept for a film there. It wasn't this.
Well, and I think that's the thing, right? Is like you're already playing with like time scales and time frames that are like pre-biblical, right? Like at one point one of the characters refers to the Great Flood,
and it's like, okay, so is that the Great Flood? And I don't know. I don't know if it's they do specifically quote the Bible at least twice,
multiple times, right? So it's one of those things where like this movie is playing in a space where it's like, what are we doing timeline wise here? You're saying that this happened 8,000 years ago?
Oh my god, that number is so crazy for so many reasons that I will love to get into.
I want to just like 7,000 BC. Like, what's going on in 7,000 BC?
You know what? Stop. I'm just gonna say this because now that you've said those numbers so many times. Andy, let's say you knew that people used to drive cars, and now nobody knows how anymore.
Yeah.
But you, when you were a kid, saw people driving cars.
I understood that there is a box, people get in the box, and it moves.
At what point do you think you could figure out, like, turning the key and pushing the pedals? Because I think at some point during your 8,000-year lifespan, you should have been able to figure that.
I think by the age of 12, I would have figured it out, right? But, like, assuming...
Okay. Follow-up question. Let's say nobody taught you how to read.
Oh, all right. Well, now...
But you speak perfectly well. You are aware that language is a thing. You know all around you is writing all the time. You have 8,000 years to figure out this language.
Well, let me say this. I still think I would have figured out how to drive a car by 12, because it's not that hard. Relearning an entire language from scratch, that might have taken me maybe a couple more decades, because it's hard.
Look, maybe it'll take a couple decades. Maybe it'll take a couple 100 years.
Maybe.
But it will take a measurable amount of time that is less than 8,000 years. Also, and I'll just say this, is her dad keeping the entire nation in the dark?
That motherfucker knows how to read.
Or did he never learn how to read or drive cars?
That motherfucker was a grown-ass man who he knows how to read.
Then what happened? Also, very importantly, I know I'm harping on this. We're not even starting the movie yet, and I'm just we're at the opening letters. How come the royal family is immortal and nobody else is? Not completely immortal, just 8,000 years old.
No, I have to believe that everyone is immortal, right?
They're not, because she says if the people from before could see us, they would be so ashamed. Like, she remembers the fall, and nobody else does.
See, but that's the thing, is that the fact that she was there, that her and her dad are 8,000 years old, is the stupidest thing in the goddamn world.
No, it's wild.
It makes no sense.
The whole movie would have made 100% more sense if they were just part of a society that was sort of declining because they no longer had the technology of the ancients. Instead, there's this 8,000-year-old teenager who's like, man, I just never figured out driving. And it's like, what the hell are you talking about?
What have you been doing this whole time?
She says society is crumbling, but that's an 8,000-year-old person who thinks that. And I don't listen to 8,000-year-old people when they have opinions, frankly.
But I honestly, once they hit the age of 60, I'm like, maybe you shouldn't be allowed anymore.
She's like...
Put those opinions away.
Back in my day... women couldn't vote, and we were better for it. I was like, jeez.
Whoa!
Oof. Come on, Hida.
But it's one of those things, right, that like this movie is like all aesthetic, but they didn't put any thought into what those decisions mean. They never thought that somebody wrote the line, you must be 8,000 years old, and they didn't stop and go, well, hold on a fucking minute, actually. Maybe that shouldn't be... Maybe the response to that should be, that's insane, or that's bad storytelling, and not, well, you look great.
It's why... And, well, the craziest thing to me, maybe not the craziest thing, there's a lot of crazy things, Milo and Princess Kida end up together, right?
Yeah.
Is there a version of, like, cradle robbing that's, like, ant robbing? And by that I mean the bug.
Yeah.
Because it's like a human being married a bug. A smart bug.
It's like, how much older is your wife than you? Oh, well, she's only 8,052 years older than me, but you know...
Also, how old is her dad? Is he like 20,000 years old? Or is he also 8,000 years old? And for some reason, they ended up like perfectly preserved, him old but preserved, and her young but preserved. Like, it doesn't make sense.
That's the thing that really doesn't make sense, right? Because if, so I don't want to talk about this because it doesn't matter to the movie because the movie doesn't actually do anything with this. But historically speaking, in ancient Sumerian mythology, there was this idea of there being antediluvian kings, right? That before the Great Flood, which is a thing in like all Middle Eastern cultures have, right? Like Abrahamic religions, Egypt, all of them had this idea of like there was this big flood that happened at some point, right?
Yeah, it was in like Gilgamesh, which is the oldest known written thing, I think. Besides, like, the oldest known like story.
According to the Sumerians and the Assyrians, right, who wrote these stories down, before that, kings had reigns that lasted like 2,000 years. 5,000 years. This motherfucker was king for like 1,000 years, but the numbers get smaller and smaller as it gets closer and closer to the flood. And there's this implication that like after the flood, how that was possible was lost. And those people didn't die, they became gods, right?
Sort of like in the Bible, Abraham supposedly lived for like 800 years.
Exactly, right? Like the Bible does it too, but they do it on a much smaller time scale. But there's this idea, right, in like all of this old writing that these people lived in an old world and they knew it was old. But in Atlantis, we just get these wild numbers thrown at us, but there's none of the Atlanteans look at this old at Leonard Nimoy, right, and go, fuck, that guy's like a living god, right?
Right.
And because that's what you would do, wouldn't you?
Especially because there is a living god under the throne, just sitting there hanging out.
Oh my god, we need to start talking about this movie from the beginning.
Yeah,
right?
yes. Let's start. Okay, so, well, here's the problem with this movie. Bigger probably than all the other, like, really questionable problems. Because you could still make a good movie that's like a white savior movie. It's just that when you watch it, you'll be like, oh, that's kind of gross.
Yeah, I can't believe I have to watch Pocahontas again for the third fucking time.
Something like that, yes. But the first half hour of this movie is not an exaggeration. It is half an hour, nothing happens. It's all set up, but it's such a long setup. And it doesn't matter, and it should be done in 5 to 10 minutes.
Well, like, we get so... Because here's the thing. This movie was supposed to be a lot longer, first of all, which is wild, because this movie is 96 minutes. There was gonna be another 30 minutes to this movie, right? Which would have really... That would have, but those 30 minutes were going to be them getting to Atlantis, right? Like, this was going to be a movie about getting to Atlantis.
The movie doesn't even start until their boat crashes. Like, I feel like nothing was happening in the movie until they crashed. And I was like, finally, Jesus. now you can see the characters doing stuff, and
But that's the
plot
thing,
moving
is that we
forward.
still don't get to see that, though, like, because it's all
Okay.
montage.
It gets it a little bit, and then it slows down immediately once they hit Atlantis. Which is the opposite of what you want a movie to do. The other movie I kept comparing this to is El Dorado,
Yeah, okay.
which managed to do this kind of story in a way that, one, I think was way less racist.
Listen.
No. I mean, we'll watch it at some point, probably.
You know what? I'm okay with making this like a 3-part set, because I'm not excited to watch the second one of these.
But with El Dorado, I feel like it did, even though it based it on the myth that native people thought that Europeans were gods. Even though it based it off of that, it was so much more palatable because it showed them, like, at first they were gonna just grift these people, and then they're like, I kind of like it here. Like, these people also have a culture that's not just something for me to look at and think is pretty. And also, very importantly in my mind, the thing they wanted was a thing that historically everybody wanted, and not a magic god battery. They just wanted gold. Everybody wants gold. Plus, it did get to say, man, Cortez fucking sucks.
Yes, I do like that about El Dorado. El Dorado has, listen, as like a person who is Hispanic, and like I largely identify more with like kind of the lower class, mixed blood parts of Hispanic heritage. That movie's got a lot of fucking problems, but I think largely it, by being like a comedy and by having a consistent tone.
Oh my god, that was the biggest issue with this one. I keep saying that, but this movie was, like, boring a lot. It was either boring or had, like, really intense action scenes.
But that's, like, this is a movie that after I my entire life, I just kept falling asleep watching. And, like, this time watching it, the only reason I didn't fall asleep was because I was so fucking mad the whole time. Which is not really the emotional place you want somebody to be in. But... like, this movie is boring, and when anything happens, it's so ridiculous that I just kept getting angry. But, like, we need to start talking about this movie. So, we start with this prologue, which is, something is happening. I don't know what, but everybody's running away from it.
I thought it was interesting, maybe unique among Disney movies, even if they drop it immediately when it comes into question. It's the most frustrating thing, is the Atlanteans have a language. That's the first thing I was like, oh, look, it's subtitled and everything. Andy would love this.
They got the fucking guy who did Klingon to do this language. Like, it's an entirely constructed language with a constructed alphabet, and it has its own, like, grammatical structure. It has its own, like,
That's interesting. Is it actually, like, Sumerian based, like Milo claimed?
So it's actually like a they constructed it to be like a root proto language,
Okay.
specifically based on like Proto-Indo-European, which is like an actual like theoretical language that people think existed, that was like the root of like all like Indian subcontinent and European languages. That there was like a root language that splintered out right into all these other languages. It was heavily based on that, Greek and Roman, which kind of creates a language that's like a root language for all major languages, including Hebrew.
Yeah, which they then do.
They don't do anything with it.
Well, no, they do something with it, but it's the worst. What they do is they're like, oh, you speak a language that's the root of all languages, so we could just speak English and you get it.
And it's like, that's not how that works.
Do.
And, like, there are some languages that you could do that with, right? Like, if I spoke Spanish to somebody who speaks Italian...
yeah, they'd probably be able to figure it out.
We could get there. We would both have to work on it, but we could get there. But if I spoke English to somebody who speaks Slavic, we're not gonna fucking get there. Like, there is nothing we could do to fucking get there instantly, right? Like, we would have to... it would take a long time. Not just instant, like, oh yeah, of course I could speak English. I've been speaking this proto-language for 8,000 years, but yeah, let's just talk English right now. Also, she recognizes Roman and French, which makes no sense because they sank below the sea before France existed as a concept. Whatever. Her fucking Ma Tim turns into a ball of light, and that's the end of the prologue.
Her mom gets hit by God. It's fucking
Tony,
brutal.
we've been talking for 30 minutes, by the way.
Look. Some of that was whatever.
5-star
All
runtime, man.
All right,
We're gonna hit it.
let's in that case, let's jump about 30 minutes into the movie. Here's what happens. Milo, he's like, guy, I love researching Atlantis, and there's supposed to be a big magic thing down there that I want to get, because it's a cool battery. And everybody's like, Atlantis isn't real, fuck off. And then an old man's like, I knew your grandfather, and he was awesome.
Your grandpa was really good at colonializing Africa, you know?
Yeah, it's weird. And he is treated as a hero, to the point that there is hero worship of him. It's very irritating.
The motherfucker is dressed exactly like Clayton, but he's like skinnier, I guess.
But this old guy's like, so I made a bet with your grandpa that Atlantis didn't exist, but now it does exist, so I'm gonna send you to go to Atlantis. And then they get onto a Jules Verne submarine. That is honestly, that's like 25 minutes, I swear to God. Also, he has a cat that for some reason disappears. They made sure that the cat went with him. And I think the cat died in the explosion.
I think the implication is that Whitmore was taking care of the cat, because at the very, very end of the movie, I think one of them is holding it while they're debriefing on what their cover story is.
The very, very end of the movie was one of the only bits of the movie that I actually enjoyed.
It was interesting. It's one of those things that the movie didn't earn it, but
no, it was fun.
They put a lot of thought into it, and it's like, maybe you should have put all this thought into the rest of your movie. So this boat is one of the coolest things in this movie, and it's in this movie for about 5 solid minutes before they blow it up.
I was so confused at this boat with how many people were on it. I was like, I thought this was about like a small crew, and it kind of is.
200 people. 200 people were on that boat, Tony, and like 20 of them?
Maybe like 30. There seems to be, whenever they want, there are a lot more randos with guns.
A double-digit number of people survived this explosion, but that still means like 150 people died!
Yes. Now, I want to do something really quick, and we need to list off all the important characters, because what this movie isn't is an ensemble piece, but
it's not.
Wants to be, kind of.
It likes the idea of an ensemble piece.
It likes the idea of an ensemble piece, and it might work as an ensemble piece. Like, that might have, if it was about these people learning about this culture, that could have been something. But instead, it's all about Milo.
Here's how we'll do it. You'll give me you'll say the name, and I'll just give like a 1-sentence descriptor.
Okay, well, I'm gonna try to give the names, and I will try to give them by ranking of which one's the best characters.
Oh, are you gonna do it from best to worst?
Yes, so first is Dr. Sweet.
He is a mixed black Native American doctor. He's really cool.
He is really cool. He has all the best lines. Second is Vinny.
Vinny is an Italian florist who has made his living with demolitions.
Then, I think I'm going to have to go with Audrey, right?
Yes, Audrey is a Puerto Rican mechanic who is also a child.
Also, a literal child, which we will get back to in a little bit, because it is at first it's like, that's like a kid working on this ship, and then later it's like,
Whoa. Yeah.
Then are there only 2 more?
No, there's a lot. There's like 3 more.
Oh my God. Okay, well, and I guess next is Helga.
Helga is a femme fatale who goes through the exact like arc a femme fatale would go through in this kind of movie.
It pretty much exactly. Like, she's from a different movie, like a noir movie.
The music even changes to like soft sax every time.
She's a little bit the Nazi from the third Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah, a little bit. The writers of this movie are a little too horny for her, and it's very uncomfortable.
Yes. And then there's Rourke.
Rourke is like your classic John Wayne American colonel, but he's also like a homicidal maniac. And
last, I believe, and obviously least, is Molière.
Molière is a mole man who is French and a pervert. You missed 2.
Did I? Who the fuck did I miss?
2. You missed Cookie.
Oh my God. Okay, see, that's the problem. There are these 2 characters who are even less than everybody else not characters.
They are. You have Cookie, who is the cook.
He's like, I don't know, he must be like a retired cowboy or something.
It's implied that he's like a retired miner, but he's also like Southern to the point of parody. So for a moment, I thought maybe he was like a Confederate veteran or something, but I really don't know what this movie's trying to do with him. But he's like a minor 49er, you know?
He does use Jefferson Davis as like a sweater.
That's literally why. So I was like, is he saying Jefferson Davis like Jesus or like the devil? I don't know, but the fact that he brought it up in this Disney movie makes me not like him. And then we have Miss Packard, who is the telephone operator woman.
Who, by all accounts, should have been dead when the sub exploded. I don't know how she survived. That doesn't make any sense.
I'm pretty sure she's like the voice of Mrs. Potato Head or something. But I'm looking at her like IMDb, and it looks like she just played the voice of Mrs. Packard in like 500 Atlantis things. So,
jeez, wow, yeah, she's a lot of not characters.
A lot of waitresses in this.
Yeah.
And obviously, like, last but not least is Milo Thatch, who is just like your like white savior nerd.
Yeah, he's the lead. He's buffer than he has any right to be. He spends most of the time in like a wife beater, and it's like, how come his arms and like shoulders are so big?
It's weird because at the beginning of this movie he's so thin, but at the end of the movie when it's like, oh, he's the hero now, he gets like muscles out of nowhere. Mm-hmm. It's like, what?
I was just looking at him, I was like, why does Milo have pecs? He shouldn't have pecs.
Milo Thatch's like only characteristic is that he's voiced by Michael J. Fox, and like that is not enough.
There are some scenes where it's almost enough.
I get it. It's Michael J. Fox. We love him. He's got that voice that makes us trust him. Mm-hmm. It's not enough. You gotta also make him a good person, at least, right? You gotta at least also make him a good person.
You could have made him a bad person so that he could have done the heel turn and said to himself, I don't want to be the person my grandfather was. I don't want to
be a colonialist
for treasures. I want to help these people. And that would have been something, but he was always going to help those people, despite the fact that makes zero sense with this character.
Because he didn't know they were there.
He didn't know they were there, so why did they keep anything from him? God, irritating.
Right? Okay. I know. They were just... What if there had been no people there, then they would have gotten there, and Rourke would have been like, hey, listen, I'm really sorry about this, but I've been keeping this hidden from you this whole time, because I thought it would be a fun prank. Anyway, hey, maybe if you had read this page, we wouldn't have died so hard for the last 30 minutes, but it was pretty fun. Like, what was your fucking idea?
Milo is given this book that leads to Atlantis. He's the only one that can read it because he is a linguist. Spoiler, the commander, it doesn't matter. Why did I care enough to change that? takes the page out of the book that's like about the battery that Milo has talked about wanting to bring back.
It's the one thing he cares about is bringing back this battery.
It's the one thing he most cares about, certainly. And so there's no reason to hide it from him. But they do hide it from him so there can be a betrayal in the final act of the movie.
It just doesn't make sense. Also,
it's just very irritating.
Sorry, it really bothers me, and it shouldn't, but they all have lambdas on their shirts, and that makes the L sound, motherfuckers. It's not called Latlantis. Just make it an A. Oh man, I love the movie Atlantis. It's even red, like they're the fucking Spartans.
They take their Jules Verne 20,000 League Under the Sea giant-ass submarine, and...
that I assume that they just had.
It gets attacked, it gets attacked by a robot lobster.
This robot lobster. How did we feel about this robot lobster?
It was a decent enough robot lobster in that it was animated well, and it was kind of a fascinating fight. The issue was, with me, why was Atlantis so well protected?
They didn't know they were going to be down there.
Right. And supposedly, they didn't know how to build things after, quote, the Great Flood, like after they'd sunk. So why is there a giant lobster? And also, this king has done a real bad job of making Atlanteans suspicious of outsiders. I don't know what he did wrong, but later, I was like, why is there a giant lobster if they're just gonna let him in?
They're just gonna let him in, just guide him there. Also, I just want to just because I thought it was not interesting, but weird. Why does the lobster have little lobster claws that it can use to hold things like massive boats, but then even bigger lobster claws that it uses to not destroy said boat. I don't know why, but it did. So here we are. This is what I mean, right? They just like are constantly being like, look at how cool this looks, but they don't put any thought into like, why would it be there? Why would it be this way? Right? At this point, after their boat's destroyed, for some reason, everybody on the crew doesn't like Milo Thatch, which makes no sense.
It's so weird. It's like there's a subplot here about him needing to be accepted, and it's like I don't understand why this is part of it. He is already an important part of the crew and has been charming enough. And the way he wins them over is being better at mechanics than their best mechanic they've ever had, which infuriated me because it was like, oh, it's a girl,
so she can't be good at her job.
Yeah.
We also get a glimpse of the like fucking hell gas stormtroopers here.
Oh my god! Why do they have gas masks? It's only to make them faceless, right?
It's so that they're not people.
Because I was thinking in the final fight, I was like, man, these guys are shooting a lot of their friends,
and they're just quipping. I don't know.
It's just wild.
It doesn't make sense. This like montage, right, of them getting to Atlantis, because they're like I don't know. The movie kind of paints Milo as being inept when it needs him to be inept, but competent when it needs him to be competent, and it doesn't differentiate.
He kind of has the Paul Blart problem.
Yeah, he kind of
of like being inept until he's literally the savior of the movie.
This is the second time in a row we've compared this
movie to... movie from now on, I'm going to compare it to Paul Blart.
That's the secret, right? It's like Paul Blart is like Atlantean for movies. It's like the proto-movie upon which all movies spawned. Fuck.
That is the most brutal thing I've ever heard.
I can't. We get... This montage of them... This montage makes no sense, because they're like traveling through like the heat and snow and...
does it not make sense, Andy? Does it not make sense? Because last I checked, they got out of their big old ship in these little, small, like
smaller, faster, better ships.
Smaller, faster, better ships, but fine. Maybe those are there because the big one could carry a lot of people, but they would need the small one to go down the small...
That's a real Titanic problem.
That's fine. But how did they get the cars?
Well, they were in the smaller, faster ships.
How?
Tony.
What?
I don't know! I
And
think it's a
even if that
Transformers
is
thing.
true, even if you say it's okay, they can somehow fit that giant drill into that tiny ship, then you have to say, alright, fine. But where in the cars were the planes?
Yeah, no, the fact that they have planes at the end of this movie is bananas. Also, it's 1914. We don't have planes this good.
They have really good planes. And I thought they were going to use the balloon because they didn't have
planes!
But in the end, they just have planes.
Yeah, it's wild.
Also,
I don't know.
It's 1914.
Well, it's because it looks cool, right? Like,
yeah, it's like, okay, whatever. I can allow for a certain amount, but that's just breaking it at that point. And the thing is, the movie is so boring at this point in the movie that you need to be factually correct, because all you're gonna do is have people saying, well, that's wrong.
Well, that doesn't make sense. That doesn't
make any sense. You're just gonna have people bored, staring at it, thinking, well, I can see all the seams.
I wanna...
You know what I never think about, ever?
Yeah.
Is how there are definitely not enough bugs to feed a lion. And do you know why I don't think about it? Because it's just a good movie.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't care that Simba can't survive on slugs.
I'm gonna read to you an excerpt from the Wikipedia.
Okay, hit me.
That I think is very funny. Don Hand pointed out that the absence of songs presented a challenge for a team accustomed to animating musicals, as solely action scenes would have to carry the film. Kirk Wise said it gave the team an opportunity for more on-screen character development. Quote, "We had more screen time available to do a scene like where Milo and the explorers are camping out and learning about one another's histories. An entire sequence is devoted to having dinner and going to bed. That's not something we would typically have the luxury of doing." End quote.
Okay, now, to be fair to this movie, and to be fair to that person, that was one of the better scenes in the movie, but there's no reason why it should have needed to be. Also, if you put in a song, you typically have people just singing about themselves, and that is character exploration.
I also would like to point out, right, like, they had an entire sequence in Beauty and the Beast in which characters have dinner and go to bed!
Go to bed! Oh my god!
What are you talking about? It's one of those things where it's bananas that, like also that dinner scene, right, where they're like, we finally accept you, Milo. For no reason, but also there was no reason for us not
There's
to
no reason
accept
for them
you.
not to accept him. It's the most frustrating thing. The best thing I can think of is that they all knew that they were going to have to betray him, and they didn't want to get close. But that lends too much credence to the later part of the movie, where it's just... But the problem is their betraying him doesn't make sense.
Yeah, their betraying him doesn't make sense, but also the movie doesn't portray it as, we're trying to keep our distance from this guy because we're going to betray him. It's, we don't like this guy because he's an inept, like, fuck-up, right?
Right. And if this movie was a better movie, Milo would not have to prove himself like that because there's no reason to do it. He is the expert on this team.
There are, like, two things that I want to note here, right? That dinner sequence is fine. That dinner sequence should have happened at the beginning of the fucking movie, because we've been hanging out with these characters for like 20 goddamn minutes of nothing happening, and only now we get to learn their backstories. That's bad fucking writing.
This is genuinely when I feel like the movie starts. Now, that being said, it's not like the movie suddenly gets good.
No, but it's the equivalent of, like, if in The Return of the King, right? That's too far. If in the Two Towers, halfway through the Two Towers, maybe even at the beginning of Two Towers, Aragorn is like, all right, everybody, let's sit down and really talk about who we are as people. I know we've been hanging out for this entire movie, but I don't really get your guys' deal. By the way, my name's Strider. I'm an half-elven royal human. What's your guys'? Like, what are you talking about? This has to happen sooner. I don't know who these people are. And also, on top of that, we are introduced to these characters, right? We get to know who they are as people, sort of. We don't get to hang out with them after this anymore, because we spend the rest of this movie...
And the fact that we don't get to learn who Moulier is, it literally brings about the best line in the movie.
Yes. It's an amazing line. What was it? It was, trust me on this one, you don't want to know. Audrey, don't tell him. You shouldn't have told me, but you did, and now I'm telling you, you don't want to know. Great line. Delivered perfectly. Great. Shout out to that actor whose name is Phil Morris. That guy is awesome, and he has been in like 5 million things.
He stole the scene every scene he was in. The problem is Dr. Sweet is in 3 scenes.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Is this is the scene where we finally get to learn who these people are as people, and we spend the rest of the movie after this point hanging out with Kida.
Yeah, that's the thing. And then Kida doesn't get to be a character anymore. She just stops being a character for like the third part of this movie. And it's like, great, so first we hang out with these people, then we hang out with Kida, then we lose Kida, and now we have to hang out with these people again. Like they're our backup date.
But now they're bad guys, so they're like a bad backup date. But it's like, what character development are you doing? Because so far all you've done is introduce them. That's not character development.
Yeah, that's just character establishment.
Yeah, right? It's like, I've been in quarantine for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I suddenly learned who my neighbor was tomorrow, that's not introducing the character.
To compare it a little to Beauty and the Beast, it doesn't have a lot of those good character introducing moments like where Cogsworth and Lumiere just fight.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, okay, I know who these people are because they're fighting.
Like, we don't get to see these characters interact with each other or Milo in any meaningful way before or after this dinner scene until the reveal of the betrayal.
Yeah. The irritating thing about everybody's heel turn is that Dr. Sweet was the first one who heel turned, and he basically did it off screen.
Yeah! Oh, I'm so mad about this.
That was really weird. I was like, were they gonna leave Sweet behind?
I guess so.
Yeah, maybe.
Well, and the little we know about their characters also doesn't come into why they've made their decisions, right? Milo uses it to guilt trip Audrey and Italian man Vinny. But other than that, it doesn't come into play, right? They're all just decide, well, we've already betrayed him. I guess we should not betray him now, because that's what the script said we should do.
That's what the script says we should do. Also, here's the really irritating thing is, like, they were down for taking stuff from an ancient, abandoned city.
Yeah.
Fine. They were down for stealing from actual human people who were still living. I can see how that gets kind of shaky. They were no longer down for kidnapping. Also fine. But the irritating thing is that Milo gets to the point where he's not down for stealing from these people immediately. And that is, I feel like, where a normal person would be. But these are normal, regular people. They're not, like, evil and they turn. They're normal people who do a job.
Yeah, they're not faceless Hellgas stormtroopers, right?
Like, what is up with these faceless stormtroopers? I guess the thing is, they wanted that big firefight at the end.
That's because they want to be Star Wars. This movie wants to be Star Wars so fucking bad, and it's like, stop it. You don't... Every time, like, a quote-unquote action scene happens in this movie, it feels like a different movie. Because most of this movie is just walking and talking and, like, exploring. So, and then all of a sudden, like, an air duel dogfighting thing happens.
The action scenes are great.
They're fine. They look good.
But they do feel like they're from a different movie, and they don't really fit in the movie that they're in. Now, speaking of action scenes, everything's on fire.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's right. So we get these fireflies that are actually made of fire, I guess.
I guess I don't need them to explain it. I guess it's possible.
Once you throw a giant mechanical lobster at me, fine. Fireflies can actually cause fire.
Whatever. Anyway, the bridge collapses, Milo gets hurt, but a sexy lady saves him.
They made the key mistake, really, of putting their heaviest fucking vehicle up front of that caravan. Like,
I don't know why they did that.
Nah, dog, I don't trust like that. If we're going across a bridge, the lightest things are in the front. They crash. I think another pretty good line, another pretty good shot in this movie is like when Rourke lights the match and he's like, all right, who's not dead? That's a good line.
Yes. Rourke, I ranked him low, but he's like better Clayton. Rourke is like a Clayton that I understand.
I was going to say, would you say better Clayton?
I mean, they gave him time to, like, fucking breathe in the movie to be a character, at least a little. They did not do that with Clayton.
I will say, though, right, is like, Clayton is such a weird character because he could easily have been a hero of the movie and they decided to make him a villain. But there is a point in this movie where they just decide that Rourke needs to be Jason from the fucking Friday the 13th movies. He literally just grabs an axe and is like, I guess I'm Jason now.
Yeah,
and it's like...
It's like crazy.
And it's like, okay, this doesn't really add up to, like, this, like, what I would say is an hyper-intelligent, like, military mercenary, right? He also decides at that moment to, like, Darth Sidious his right hand, which is, again, bananas.
So, Milo, while everybody else is trying to figure out how to get out of this hole, he is saved because he has, like, a scratch. I assume
the world's smallest injury. I'm pretty sure he was stable, but...
It's Disney, so...
It could have gotten infected. Oof.
He is saved by Princess Kida, who heals his injury, and this is mentioned again, but never really brought up again. I feel like everybody kind of slept on the fact that she could do this.
We're leaning into some real, like, vibranium bead shit with these fucking necklaces, right?
Yes, absolutely.
But unlike the vibranium beads, which are established to be made of nanomachines, these are just glowing rocks. So, like, they say that they're just glowing rocks.
It's like how you can use nanomachines for everything. You can also
glowing rocks.
Use magic for anything.
Glowing rocks. You can use them to make lightsabers. So I guess what were we talking about? So they save for some reason. Kira saves Milo. Well, heals him. Heals him. He doesn't save him. She heals him.
Yeah, he's fine. He follows her to Atlantis, and there's a super long panning shot. It's like, oh, fuck, look what we did. We made Atlantis. Oh, jeez. The clouds don't move, even though they should.
Here's the problem, right? Well, okay, Tony, the fact that there are clouds is already baffling, but what would make them move?
I think they're clouds. I think they're mist from the
waterfall.
Waterfall.
Stuff, right?
Which should move. It irritated me that was the one thing that was sitting still. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, I understand, but, like, here's my bigger problem, is we get this big establishing shot of Atlantis, right?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the movie, Atlantis doesn't look like that.
Well,
It looks
I
completely different.
Yes, it does, but I think that is because Kita rebuilt it as it should have been, instead of as it was after the flood.
No, I mean when they're all like, when all of Atlantis is standing on like the fucking patio of Atlantis, right? And watching these statues stand up and be like, all right, let's applaud for the ending of this movie and make a shield, right? We had an establishing shot at the beginning of this movie showing us what this island looked like. And at the end of this movie, before Kira activates the stone statues, we get another establishing shot and it looks completely different. It's just wild that like you just like, would you freaking forget to look at the previous one? You did it before. Put lava over it, and now all of a sudden the fucking topology of it doesn't make sense anymore either. I don't know. It's one of those things, right? Like, they put so much thought into this movie that every time something like this happened, it's like they're clearly mismanaging themselves.
They talk to Kita and they do this stupid, it's a proto-language, so it totally works with English and French and everything. And she's like, welcome to Atlantis. And she just lets him in. It made me so furious.
That entire, like, segment, right? Where he says, we are explorers from the surface world, and then she just says, welcome to the city of Atlantis. That is the nastiest cut, I think, in this movie. It feels so jarring. Like, there was a whole other scene in there where a little more conversation happens. Like, I don't know if you want to, like, go back and watch it again, but him saying, we are explorers from the surface world, we come in peace, and then it's just, like, immediately hard cut, welcome to the city of Atlantis, and I'm like, ugh.
Andy.
Ugh.
I can't be clear enough about this. I don't want to go back and watch it again.
No, I'm not saying you should actually do it.
Andy,
I'm just saying it just...
Andy, no, listen, though. I would rather not.
So they're just in Atlantis. We meet Leonard Nimoy at this point. His character doesn't get a name. He's just like king or whatever, chief or whatever. He's literally just Atlantean king.
There's something I want to note, just really quick. Cree Summer is native. I'm looking up her bio, and I can't find, like, what tribe or whatever, but native on some level. And I was like, okay, it's a Native American archetype, so they got a Native American person, and then they got Leonard Nimoy for the only other person who talks, and it's like, great, so they did actually, like, the literal smallest thing they could do, which was pretty irritating.
She is from the Red Pheasant Cree Nation.
I wonder if she was literally named for that. It's literally the smallest concession they could make to say that, like, I don't know, it's not just about white people. Because it is. It's just about white people.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is like, Kita isn't a character. She has no agency over herself or her culture at all.
Despite the fact that there are many reasons why she should.
You would think that somebody who lived in a singular place for 8,000 years.
She is, at the very least, a demigod, and later, spoiler, becomes a god, and at no point does she have any agency. She is constantly having to be told what to do or saved.
And it's one of those things where this is part of what I think makes this worse than Tarzan to me. They chose to do this. There's no source material that they can blame. This is all original, baby. They made it up to be this. And it's so bad. And I feel like a lot of people are giving them a lot of credit that they haven't earned, because you have this, like, diverse cast that also isn't characters.
Yeah, it's a shame, because what happens is, you look at the cast and you watch the movie and you think, if somebody who wanted to tell a good story was in charge, this cast, and there was a version of the screenplay that could work. That is not about minimizing this woman in her own culture, you know? Just
the act of having this character's, like, interactions with Milo Thatch literally be like, you know more about my culture than I do, is so fucking gross. It is disgusting. I cannot explain to somebody how insulting that is, that they wrote that. We said this, but I don't think we outlined it. Kita can't read. She cannot read. She can't read Atlantean, despite the fact that she is, one more time, 8,000 years old.
She's also never figured out how to turn on their fish cards, even though she talks about how she did everything except for the one thing that she needed to do, which was hold her hand and turn the key at the same time.
And jiggle the key a little bit. Just fucking do it randomly. It probably would have gotten there eventually, right?
Right, exactly. This takes an afternoon to figure out. You might get frustrated, you might leave and come back, but, like, this is something that if she cared about it, it would be solved, unless, and this is a possibility with this character because I have no evidence to the contrary, she's just dumb as shit.
Right, and that's the thing, right?
And that's what sucks about it, right? It's just oh, this person, oh, she's not smart enough. You need the white guy to help.
And it's worse because the only other, like, competent woman we have met also needed Milo to do her fucking job.
Yes, absolutely. Well, there's one more competent woman, but her thing's just guns.
Yeah, I guess Mrs. Packer didn't need Milo's help to, like, call people.
I guess that's true.
But
I don't think she's competent, though. I think part of the joke of her character is she just does whatever she wants.
She's like the trope of, like, the incompetent secretary, which is gross.
I mean, but it's fine.
And Helga is sexualized to, like, the point of absurdity, which is also gross. And actually, but so are Kita and, oddly enough, Audrey, who is, again, a child.
Do you think Audrey is?
There are a couple of shots in this movie that my girlfriend pointed out where they just, like, focus in on her butt in weird ways that I'm just like, I didn't catch that, right? Like, I didn't catch that.
Me neither,
my girlfriend pointed this out to me. But it also, like, her whole relationship with Milo is gross. And again, you know, it didn't have to be. They could have just made her a fucking adult.
Or they could have made her a kid and then had that conversation at some point. But they didn't.
They don't.
Instead, she's just a kid and she's like, yeah, well, my dad's back home and I do this mercenary work for money for my dad so he can open a second shop. Excuse me?
Not even a first one.
Not even a first one. Not because they have so little money that she needs to do it so they can open an auto shop. No, this is for a second one.
Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense. Her story, if you stop to examine it at all, is crazy. And it's a little bit too much like Vinny's story.
Yeah, right.
And he at least is trying to rebuild the one shop
that he accidentally blew up.
Yes. But
Vinny's story is also kind of gross because it's clearly supposed to be funny that he likes flowers. This movie is like, I don't know.
I mean, okay, but if he's a trope that's like, he likes explosions, then showing that he likes flowers could be a little bit funny. That's fine. I don't think that's too far. But,
no.
Like, there's other stuff that the movie does bad. For instance, everything.
Everything else, right?
Everything else. Oh, also, I pointed this out. I did wish that Dr. Sweet is black and Native American.
He is half black and half a Native American.
Which he's gotta be just about the most, I don't know, like, hard up. Like, he's a doctor.
Oh, okay. And he's a doctor.
How did he get through medical school being a black Native American? That sounds impossible.
In 1914.
And that's the problem with this movie, is there was bits like that where I'm like, I'm so interested in this character because of what that would mean, but then they don't do anything with it.
Well, yeah, because you have this half black, half Native American man be like, nah, I'm cool with all this colonialism, though. Let's do it. I'm there. I'm not going to stop it.
If he had to work with these people because nobody would hire him as a doctor,
right?
That would be fascinating to me. I would love that.
It shows their whole ass that they don't actually know at all what they're writing about, that they could willingly put this interesting character in this situation and then not explore it at all. Any writer with even an ounce of credibility would have been like, hold on, let's back the fuck up. This is something. You could write a whole fucking movie about that shit.
And to be fair to the writers, it is possible, you mentioned earlier that, like, Joss Whedon claimed that there was nothing of his in this anymore. And maybe it's possible. There are, like, 6 writers on this. It's possible that at one point, Dr. Sweets was a fascinating character.
No,
and they ended up just throwing it all on the cutting room floor.
I do not believe that for a second. I do not.
I'm maybe giving them too much credit because I want him to be a good character.
Right, but like, and that's the thing, right? Is like this screenplay, which was written by Tab Murphy primarily, with the exception of Jackie Zabel, who is a white woman as opposed to a white man. There is nobody in this list of people who I would trust to competently write any of these characters in a meaningful way. They don't have the life experience to do it, and they sure as hell didn't bring anyone on who had the life experience to do it.
That's a good point. And you can't do one of the favorite, is my understanding, Joss Whedon things, which is just hire the people and have them kind of ad-lib it until they land somewhere.
Yeah, that's doing that for animation is insanity. Yeah.
You have to really nail down. You have somebody like writing it down as they went and then showing it to the people animating it and being like, can you do this?
Can you make the mouth do this? I know that the mouth was doing this, but make it do this instead.
That's how you get faces like Quest for Camelot.
Yeah, where their lips are sliding around. It's so frustrating because they put so much money into this movie and none of it went where it really needed to go, which was putting together a coherent story that said anything. So it ends up just being Pocahontas, just being Avatar the Blue People movie. It's pretty, but it has no substance. And if you dig down even a little bit, you run into the fucking like hard mantle that is just white savior colonialism. And I'm sorry, but I don't fucking want that shit anymore. I'm done with it.
So speaking of which, the king's like, no, you guys gotta get out of here. And they're like, no, we'll stay for a day. It's like, oh, okay, stay for a day. Really fucking folded real quick.
Yeah, right.
Milo is voted to go on a date with Kita so that he can discover what the king is hiding.
This is a really gross scene, by the way.
Okay, so we've already talked about all the, like, shit that Milo has to teach Kita because she's useless, but that's not the thing that got me when I really started thinking about it. Obviously, that was terrible, but that's normal terrible for all the things we were just talking about.
Yeah.
The weird part is that later, all that information that he supposedly learned is never brought up again because they have the page that just says where the thing is, and they just give it to her and say, oh, now that we've betrayed you, somehow, now that we had you go out on a date with somebody so that you learn to like them instead of us, here's the page so you can betray them. It's so weird.
Well, I want to go back a little bit and talk about this mural. There's no writing on this mural, Tony. Tony, there is no writing on this mural. Tony, I scoured every frame of this. And by scoured, I mean I looked at it. There's no writing on it. Why did she need him to read it? Tony!
Okay, well, the thing about Kita is she also doesn't know what pictures mean.
Oh my god, you guys had one job.
Just put some writing on the mural.
It says in the script that she can't read the mural, and you didn't put any writing on it. And at that point, I don't know how to help you. I really don't, guys.
So we finally get to the betrayal that we've been talking about this entire time.
It's such a twist because it makes no sense. It's very M. Night Shyamalan-esque.
M. Night Shyamalan. Like, yes. I honestly thought, as I watched this movie, I was like, okay, so Rourke definitely turns.
Yeah.
Like, Rourke's definitely in this for himself. And I also had my eye on Helga, although I would have thought that she'd get a heel turn.
She kinda does, but not really.
Not really. She has a, if I'm gonna die, you're gonna die moment, which is not quite the same thing. Yeah, she's just like, fuck you. In fact, this is maybe the one Disney movie I've ever seen where the villain kills his sidekick. So I thought it would be Helga and
Rourke,
right, who turned on the others. But it's everybody. And they're like, haha, Milo, you didn't know, but we were really here for the battery that you talked about wanting to get. It's like, okay. And he's like, God, how dare you? Oh my gosh, I never would have done this. You're all in it for the money. I'm like, yeah, we told you we were in it for the money.
We literally said so in that dinner scene.
We told you we were in it for the money, and guess what? You will also learn a lot from this god battery that they have. And we're gonna punch the king so he dies later. Dies of internal bleeding. This is the moment when Sweets turns. He's like, oh, you just punched an old man, and I don't like that. And then that is left alone until, 15 minutes later, we get to see Sweets again.
We get a whole ass scene where everybody is like, we've decided abruptly at this moment to unbetray you, Milo.
after they load his girlfriend onto a truck and then don't unload her.
Yeah, they really...
They just stood there while their boss took the truck.
Hashtag resist, am I right, guys? So
Jesus.
they...
Yeah, that is what it is. It's like
my God.
thoughts and prayers.
Sorry, by the way, I don't remember much about this movie, but I did not expect Kita to literally just become a glowing object.
It was really upsetting. She looks over to Milo. Okay, so they go and they find the god crystal that they have. And Kita starts glowing like her mom did and like levitating toward it, and she looks over to Milo and says, Don't even worry, I got this.
Chill.
All will be well, she says. And then she turns into the crystal, and the crystal, like, becomes woman-shaped and turns into her. And then, nothing!
I assume she just walked into that fucking steel tomb.
It's so wild, like, I thought she was gonna start fucking zapping people or something.
It is almost, I thought she was gonna start Dr. Manhattaning these motherfuckers.
Right.
Zap, you've ceased to exist.
What I thought was gonna happen was she was going to kill these people, and she was gonna maybe lose control, and Milo would have to stop her, and that would almost be interesting.
That would almost be a movie.
That would almost have made her a character.
Oh, man. And so, at this point, the king says the wildest thing. And I know we've had a lot of wild things happening in this movie, guys.
This one's rough.
But
this one, we call this movie a white savior movie. But I don't think I've ever actually seen a white savior movie where the native guy is like, you are our white savior.
only you.
Wild.
Hey, I know that there is a super cool half Native American, half black guy over there who saved
right there.
my
also,
life.
He has like 300 pounds on you.
That man is made of nothing but muscle and kindness. But
He looks
God,
like John fucking Henry.
and he saved my life. But Milo, only you could save us.
Only you can save us. If he had said something like, this is all your fault, you need to fix it, then that would at least be something. But it's not. He's just like, oh, it's up to you now. Guy I hated 2 seconds ago. It's like, what are you doing? If he didn't want this to happen, why didn't he tell his people how to use the cars? The cars that shoot lasers!
But now, before he dies and tells Milo that, hey, white man, it's up to you, buddy, he also says that he also vaguely sort of implies that he's the reason all of this happened. And that the crystal has a conscience.
Yes, the crystal absorbs people every once in a while.
Just decides to do it.
Yeah, like when shit's going really bad, I guess. But this doesn't make any sense because it doesn't happen in this movie. But I think the idea is that when something is going wrong, it needs like a host to be able to control it.
I guess as a conduit for its will, right? But it can only be somebody of royal blood.
All of these old kings' wills basically get put into the crystal. Now that is fascinating and could have been something.
Now here's the thing though, Tony, is because the only person we've seen get absorbed by this crystal are Kira and her mom, and Kira gets out of that shit.
Kira gets out of it with nothing, and her mom doesn't, and neither of them do anything really while crystallized. Her mom just disappears, is gone forever. Kira's like, I guess she, at the end, gets the robots moving, but she doesn't stop these invaders. Sorry, what was it?
What I was saying is that Kira's mom gets absorbed into the crystal, right? Essentially becoming one with its consciousness. But she doesn't get a cool floating rock head. Now what the fuck is up with that?
I don't know, maybe she did. Maybe she was already up there. They kind of look like dudes, though.
Yeah, it said that those are the kings of the past.
I don't know, man. It could be that this movie's not good to its female characters.
And it could be, and so let's just throw
slightly
this,
better than the last two movies.
Slightly better, but we're not. Yeah, we like. Don't get me wrong. We've walked a mile away from where we used to be, but we are still also miles away from where we could be.
But guess what? It's still 2001.
Oh God, Milo gives, I think, the worst. Oh wait, no, we get the one other Atlantean who has a line, Tony. Do you know what he says? How is this done? Good question, random citizen.
It's so fucking infuriating. Anyway, now the Atlanteans have their magic cars, have their magic car Laserfish, And so does Milo and everybody, and they go fight all the white people who are dressed as stormtroopers in planes. It's wild that that doesn't take place in the 40s, right? Because you could have Nazis if it was the 40s, and you could have nuclear power if it was the 40s. There could be this idea that this was like the key to nuclear power.
Oh my god! Now we're talking. Now that's a fucking movie.
But instead it's 1914, and it's wild. It's just nothing. World
War II is like right around the corner. Sorry, World War I. Sorry, my bad.
Right. In fact, there shouldn't be planes this good until
there shouldn't be. So this final fight scene is one of the most boring things in the world. It's a lot of nonsense.
I don't know, it's actiony. It's fine.
It just it has no weight pertaining to the narrative, what little we have, right?
Yeah, you know that the good guys are gonna win. You're already there. There's a moment where Rourke and Helga, where Rourke betrays Helga by throwing her off the balloon because she's too heavy, which is damn.
Wow, I know, right? How, on top of everything else.
And she shoots him. And she shoots the balloon and it explodes. She's
right? As she should, to be honest. And
he comes at Milo with this fucking axe, as you described, fucking Friday the 13th guy.
Jason, his name is Jason.
Coming on swinging, and he hits the thing containing Kita, and Milo cuts him with the glass, which turns him for some
into a crystal monster.
Into a crystal monster in one of the weirdest Disney deaths, because he's still alive and he's gonna fucking
at this point. This crystal golem has one goal, and it's kill Milo Thatch. But unfortunately, it meets its end in a. What does he get shredded by the propeller things at the bottom?
Yeah.
I don't know why this balloon needs propeller things. They're not doing anything except to be there to cause somebody's gruesome death. Fuck, guys. We made this balloon. We didn't put in any gruesome death blades.
Kita falls, and I found that hilarious. I was like, good job, Milo, you dropped your girlfriend.
They're not even dating yet, dude. They haven't even held hands. So
yeah, well then even worse.
Right? You just dropped this woman. I used to teach dance classes. This is the number one thing you don't do is just drop somebody.
The chain that's holding her comes off, and he has to run back and put it together, and it reminded me so much of the scene in Back to the Future.
Oh my god.
When Doc Brown has to connect the wire before the lightning strikes, I was like, oh, but now Marty's doing it. And I wondered if that was on purpose.
They get her back to Atlantis. Atlantis has somehow completely changed how it looks in that time. Magic, I assume. She gets all the big stone boys to clap and dab, and they make a shield, and it protects Atlantis from the pyroclastic flow of this volcano in what is a really good shot, actually.
Oh yeah, I like when the lava covers Atlantis and cools over it.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah, they were in a volcano.
Oh yeah, they're a volcano. There's a volcano blowing up this entire time. The final scene was in the volcano. I don't remember what... It's exploding and it's a volcano, I guess. Sure, they were going to use it to get to the surface.
Yeah.
She saves Atlantis. She, floats back down to Earth, and Milo catches her, which is a bit much. Doc, don't touch her. Just let her... She'll be fine.
Yeah, I was watching this with my girlfriend, and they hugged, and she was like, if he kisses her, that's going to be so awful.
Oh, it's bad, right?
But
honestly,
he doesn't kiss her, to be fair.
Well, instead we get something a little bit worse, which is him, wearing native Atlantean stuff.
I mean, that's later. I assume they're married. There is an amount of, there's an amount of you would need to adopt some of the native culture stuff if you marry into the royal family. Otherwise, they're just going to be like, hey, what's that French person doing here? Let's chop her head off. I said French, but she was German. She was in France. She was German?
I thought she kind of. I mean, they chop her head off anyway. What are you talking about?
I was thinking Marie Antoinette.
Yeah, they chop her head off anyway, Tony. What are you talking about?
But that's what I'm saying, because she wasn't French.
No,
That wasn't
Tony,
the reason, but that was one of the reasons why people didn't like her.
There were a lot of reasons. I feel like
Austria,
her not being
God
French
damn
was
it.
very far away.
Historically, there's always been a problem when somebody marries somebody who is... When a king or a queen marries somebody, and it's like, oh great, now we're ruled by somebody from a foreign land. People don't like it, which is fair. And so maybe you would overcompensate a little bit. The part where he's dressed as Atlantean, I understand that from a geopolitical perspective. Which is, again, possibly giving the movie too much credit.
No, I do think so, but it gives me the heebie-jeebies, man, to just see a white dude, like, wearing this, like, non-existent indigenous culture's clothing. It just doesn't sit right with me, you know?
I mean, is it better or worse that it's non-existent? It's gotta be better.
I don't know. I think either way it's
close
bad.
Your eyes. Close your eyes. Picture Milo in a Native American headdress.
Yeah, that's really bad.
Like, that's worse, though, right?
Yeah, it's worse, but it's still, like, either way it's bad,
saying,
Tony.
It's worse.
My point is that either way it's bad, and he could have just been wearing normal clothes, you know?
Well, that's the other thing, too. All he appears to have are these, like, faux army clothes the whole time.
It's fine.
Yeah, it's probably needs to get changed occasionally.
Maybe give him a shirt.
Anywho, it doesn't matter. It's not important. It's a little important, but it does not at all hold up to all the other stuff they do.
Yeah, it's just like another thing to throw on this, like, big pile of shit, right? Like,
Atlantis gives everybody else a bunch of money and sends them on their way.
Which is wild.
It's just a little wild.
That's a choice.
My understanding from what I saw was that, they don't need this. Like, maybe Atlantis doesn't even use gold.
But then why did they have all of it?
Oh, probably just for decoration. You know, that I bet Atlantis is socialist because their god watches over them, like, literally.
But what is that royal decree like? Hey, everybody, anybody got any, like, gold shit?
I wouldn't look too much into this. Anyway, they give them a bunch of gold for, like, services rendered.
Thanks for unbetraying us.
Thanks for unbetraying us. Yes, thanks for not killing us at the last minute.
I really should. If I knew that
choice.
Betraying and then walking back betraying people was that profitable, I'd be doing it all the time.
Yeah.
Don't get any ideas.
So then everybody's back at Whitmore's place, and they're all... My favorite part of this was how fancy everybody was dressed. I just enjoyed that, because they're rich now.
I also really like... This is, again, just a little touch, that all of them had turned their crystals into different forms of jewelry that fit their character.
Yeah.
It's cool, it's a good touch, and it's like, where was that level of thinking for the last 90 minutes
Yeah, there could have
movie?
been more done with these characters, and this was one of the scenes where you're like, now that all these characters are just sitting around talking, it feels like there could have been more done with them.
It really feels like maybe we didn't need Milo Thatch, and we could have just hung out with these guys.
Yeah, but you forget something, is that he's white. You need a white guy.
You need a white guy. Having like a disgusting mole person and an Italian guy isn't white enough. We need just an American man.
According to Disney movies, it's not.
So they get their stories straight.
Right. Which was kind of fun. How Milo definitely died, and they never found anything, and their bosses went MIA. Who cares? Everybody's dead, and they're too rich for anybody to argue, so...
I mean, like, what else are they going to say? Yeah, we discovered Atlantis.
Yeah, we discovered Atlantis. Yeah.
And that's the end of the movie.
Which is the best part of the movie.
I didn't even... I didn't stick around to see enough of the credits to hear what terrible pop song they put over it. So I couldn't tell you what that was like. But I'm sure they did.
I mean, probably... It's disappointing. Not only that this movie is bad, but that it so captures this era of Disney where they were just making bad films. Films that at worst were like actively racist, like this one. Or films that just had a look to them but not an idea. Like, do you know what came out the year before this one? Was Dinosaur.
Fuck.
Right?
Jesus.
And it's like, yeah, that's another one where they're like, oh, I know what I want to do with this, but they don't. Or the one after it was Treasure Planet. Like, that came out just next year. It has an amazing look, and it's just not a decent movie. Like, the story isn't any good. And the issue is, I'm not, like, offended that these movies are bad. Whatever, a movie can be bad. This movie is also offensive, which is a bit different. But my problem is that these movies are probably the reason that we don't get to see movies like this anymore. Disney in the 90s was amazing.
A powerhouse. Unstoppable.
And Disney animation in, like, the 2010s has done some good stuff, but it's almost never been 2D animation.
It's never been, right? Winnie the Pooh was sent out to die.
Yes.
So I don't count it because of that.
And it's frustrating because we never get to see these anymore. I mean, you could watch, like, a TV show that they do that has this, but we're probably never gonna get another, like, Lilo and Stitch or Lion King that, like, has that same level of care in that animation.
At least not from Disney, right? At least not from the United States. But I think that's, like, the ultimate... It's one of the ultimate tragedies, right? Because, like, last year even, Klaus came out. Or Claus, depending on how you want to pronounce it. But, like, it's one of those things, right? Where, like even just, like, in 2001, right? Like, what came out in 2001? Spirited Away and Millennium Actress, which are both, like, amazing movies. And yeah, you might... regardless of what you think of, like, Hayao Miyazaki's films... Those movies are gorgeous, and they have a point. They have a theme. They have a thing that they're trying to do. And, like, what those movies are a million times better than what this is, right? What Atlantis is, right? They are, like, there are places that aren't the United States that by 2001 were pushing the medium that was animation and continue to do so, and it sucks that we just decided as a fucking country that it wasn't worth it anymore. Yeah,
or at least all the big companies did.
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
Like, look, I love Tangled, and, like, lots of the Pixar movies. And it's like, but I would like traditionally animated movies still.
Yeah. It's a different medium, right? And as much as I do love a good movie, an animated movie to me is special in the way that it can do what it does.
And like I said, it really mars this movie for me even more.
Oh,
so
yeah.
This was like... It's so hard for me to rank the movies against each other.
Oh, yeah.
But this is one of the worst ones, because most of the ones we watch, even the ones that are problematic, are not problematic in so many ways, or so consistently.
I honestly think that, like, maybe the only one I would rank below this is maybe Peter Pan, right?
Oh, as far as, like, being gross about cultures.
Yeah, but at least, like, these days when you watch Peter Pan, they cut all that shit out, and it's fine. It's fine, you know? It doesn't... that movie is lackadaisical enough that it doesn't lose anything.
Mm-hmm.
This is the whole ass movie, is this.
Yeah, it's everything.
And even Tarzan was, like, a little more fun than this.
It was, and, you know, I did not expect to be watching... I guess I kind of did. I kind of did expect to be watching this movie and thinking Tarzan was more fun. At least Tarzan, even though you hated it, had songs.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? I didn't miss Phil Collins just fucking screaming over this movie. But I don't know if it would have helped or hindered.
The other thing about Tarzan is, yes, Tarzan has a really bad imperialist message. However, because Tarzan's fucking wild, there
Pun
are
intended.
no black people, which means that is marginally better than putting a bunch of Native American people and then saying, but they don't matter.
But like inventing could you imagine if Tarzan just made up a fake African American tribe? I can, because that's what the books do.
I was gonna say, I think it happens.
But like, they knew in Tarzan, oh, maybe we should just cut that out.
Yes.
And then come Atlantis Lost Empire, we're like, what if we made that the whole movie?
Thank you for listening to directto.video.
VHS?
I have been your host, Tony Robusto.
And I have been your host, Andy Reyes.
You can find me on Twitter at TheaterBets, and you can find my comic at inspiredbytrueevents.org.
You can find me on Twitter at royalty_Valens, and you can also find my tentatively started other podcast, Time Honored Pictures, at timehonoredpictures.com.
Very exciting.
Our first episode is out. It should be out and on the feed. Our first episode should be out. Our second episode should be coming out soon. I don't know. That's a long-term project. That one. that is an odyssey, I think, and we are barely on our second stop. So, and we're already tired. We're already so tired, but we've dedicated to it. I need to find time in my schedule to like watch things that are good, Tony.
You know what? It's frankly amazing. Have you tried it recently?
Watching something that's good?
Yeah.
I have. A little while ago, I watched Your Name, which was amazing.
Oh, I love Your Name. Yeah, go to directto.video. Thank you to Lee Rosevere for Planet E off the album Trappist 1. Now we get to watch a good movie next week, right?
No.
Right,
Next week, we get to watch Atlantis 2. Milo's Return.
Love the subtitle.
Oh, can't you just wait for this guy to return? They really should have just called it Atlantis 2: The Return. Just leave people in dread. Oh god, another one.
Predator versus Atlantis.
I'm kind of excited because I have no idea what a sequel to this movie's even going to look like.
I am the ghost of John Smith. Yeah, man, you put them in, and you gotta, like, resonate with them with the Force. I know about lightsabers.
I don't. I have no idea what this is, but I didn't realize you had to meditate with the rock. I thought you could just slide it in.
I don't think you can slide it in, because it's part of your training to correctly build one.
Oh, but I thought that was just, like, Jedi bullshit. There's tons of people in Star Wars who just have lightsabers.
Yeah, but usually they're stolen.
It's fine. No, because Grievous custom-made his.
He did not. He took those from dead Jedi.
Yeah, but then he modified them.
I mean, maybe you can modify it. That's different.
I don't know.
I'm cutting this out.
It all sounds like fake bullshit to me. Nah,
God, it doesn't sound like fake bullshit.
Star Wars, fake news.
Fake bullshit.